pasakojimuose visada vienas iš pagrindinių yra apie Sugiharą. Kad tas žmogus riša 3 tautas. Tai yra japonų, lietuvių ir žydų.
私のしたことは外交官としては間違ったことだったかもしれない。しかし私には頼ってきた何千人もの人を見殺しにすることはできなかった。そしてそれは正しい行動だった。
During the history, Eastern Europe became home for around 5 million Jewish people, with the biggest community of 3.5 million residing in Poland.
Krakow as a city is an extraordinary city. It also has a tremendous Jewish past and history. And my friend and myself, spent many, many hours wandering throughout the city. The old city, which is extraordinarily beautiful with very many ancient buildings, as well as the Jewish quarter, Krakow, with its ancient synagogues and its real Jewish atmosphere.
In September of 1939, Nazi Germany and Soviet Union occupied Poland. This caused mass emigration of Polish citizens. Among them were Polish Jews, including students and professors of Jewish yeshiva. It is estimated that during the autumn and winter of 1939, close to 15,000 Jews arrived to Lithuania. Although at that time Lithuania was a safe haven, the war was escalating, and the majority of Jewish refugees were looking for possibilities to reach even safer countries. The refugees kept asking for visas in various diplomatic missions located in Kaunas. And then they learned about Japanese Vice Consul Chuni Sugihara. Mr. Sugihara was appointed as a Japanese Vice Consul in Kaunas just after the German-Soviet Treaty in August 28, 1939.
But this was from God, this appointment, because God gave him the privilege of saving so many Jews.
June of 1940 marked big changes in Lithuania's situation. It became clear that Lithuania will be annexed by the Soviet Union in the near future, which would lead to closures of foreign diplomatic missions. A glimpse of hope appeared when the island of Curaçao in the Caribbean Sea, controlled by the Netherlands, became a possible destination for refugees. This fact was discovered by a refugee student who consulted temporary consul of the Netherlands in Kaunas, Mr. Jan Swartendijk. Eventually, the consul decided to issue permissions for Jewish refugees to Curaçao. Due to the raging war, most possible routes were closed down, except one: crossing the Soviet Union, reaching Japan, and then boarding a ship across the Pacific Ocean. To achieve that, the refugees needed a Japanese transit visa.
The whole of Europe was closed, German occupied. The West and the South was closed. The only way to get out was through Japan. The only way. Okay, no other way. Absolutely, absolutely nothing. Nothing.
1940年7月18日の朝、私たちはいつもと同じように軽い朝食をとり、夫は海下に降りていきました。 その朝も階下に降りていく夫を見送り、私は自分の部屋に戻ると本を読み始めました。ノックの音がして夫が入ってきました。ちょっと窓から覗いてごらん。夫のそばに寄り、窓の外を何気なく眺めて、私は自分の目を疑いました。建物の周りをびっしりと人の群れが埋め尽くしているのです。再び夫は階下に降りていくと間もなく上がってきました。ポーランドからナチスの手を逃れてきたユダヤ人たちが日本通過のビザを要求しているんだよ。
After hearing about such a plan from the Jewish representative, Mr. Sugihara started considering the possibility. First, he had to consult the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. The Japanese government had a policy not to persecute Jewish people. Basically, the regulations only required the foreigners who entered Japan to have permission to reach their final destination and to have enough money to cover expenses of their temporal stay in Japan. However, the majority of refugees could not fulfill these basic requirements. Mr. Sugihara tried to convince his government to make an exception, but failed to get approval.
私も何を隠そう、海訓を受けた日、一晩中考えた。苦慮、反問の挙句、私はついに人道主義、博愛精神第一という結論を得た。そして私は何も恐るることなく、職をとして忠実にこれを実行し終えたと、今も確信している。
1940年7月29日の朝早く、夫が表に出て鉄柵越しにビザを発給すると告げたとき、人々の表情には電気が走ったような衝撃がうかがえました。
From July to August, Mr. Sugihara was working long hours without any rest, issuing transit visas. Since each visa required much handwriting, Mr. Sugihara suffered from wrist and shoulder pain.
Good people do good things. Everything written about Sugihara, and lots of stories, true ones and not true ones, and theories. He was essentially, basically a good, healthy, normal Japanese gentleman, and a good gentleman. He was a nice man.
Eventually, after Lithuania was occupied by the Soviet Union, all diplomatic missions, including Japanese consulate, were ordered to cease their activities and close down.
Sugihara issued visas even when he was sitting in the train, taking him out of Kaunas. He still issued visas through the windows of the train. My father said that he really was wholly encompassed in saving Jews.
The list of visa recipients contained 32 pages and 2,140 names. Among them were many prominent people, such as Zera Vahavdik, listed as number 455. After the war, he became the religion minister in Israel. Only later in their lives, the refugees learned that the visas they received were issued without Japanese government's permission.
「呆然と立ち尽くす人々の顔が目に焼き付いています。杉原、私たちはあなたを忘れません。もう一度あなたにお会いしますよ。」列車と並んで泣きながら走ってきた人が、私たちの姿が見えなくなるまで何度も叫び続けていました。
The refugees from Kaunas left for Moscow, where they took the Trans-Siberian train to travel more than 9,000 kilometers and reach the city of Vladivostok. After dangerous and exhausting travel, the refugees in Vladivostok faced another obstacle. the Japanese government had ordered the local consulate general to limit the number of refugees passing to Japan. It was the acting consul general in Vladivostok, Mr. Saburo Nei, who continued the correspondence with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs by telegram and finally allowed all Jewish refugees to leave for Japan by ship.
船が進まないんだ。波が高くて、あれを海に漂っちゃってね。全然できない。風はこれはあれ。僕が運んだのが4000いっぺんにね、400人以上乗ったっていうこともあるんじゃないかと。とにかく満杯でしたからね。3棟はね、全部地下の。
As soon as the ship left the Russian waters and went into the international waters, everybody on top, everybody was up, nobody was underneath. And somebody started singing the Zionist national anthem. That's for the hope to be in a free country without being organized, nothing, just it came out from everybody like a burst of something.
After a long journey, the Jewish refugees finally reached Suruga. When they saw the town, they raised their hands in joy. Before their eyes was Japan, a country that they saw for the first time.
That was Suruga. The first port of entry was Suruga, where I felt I'm in heaven, paradise.
Local people were very welcoming to the foreigners they had never seen before.
Here we come to Tsuruga, a little township. People are smiling, people are happy, people talk nicely, people talk quietly, even though we couldn't really understand them. It was a different world. And you had that feeling, total feeling of freedom, which doesn't need any Magna Cartas. You can feel it in the air.
全員がね、わーってこうして手を振ってくれたんですよ。もう本当に嬉しそうでしたね。
I thought it's heaven. Heaven. No war, no nothing. People were nice and polite. We were free to move around as much as you could because not knowing the language. But then I found out when I used to get lost, somebody was there from the government or the secret police putting you back in the right place to go, to find yourself where you're supposed to go because we couldn't read the signs. So, I mean, and in one nutshell, when we came into Japan, it was just like being, well, like in heaven to speak of again. We were away from whole Europe, all the problems.
Later, many refugees continued their journey to Kobe because there was a Jewish community there that could provide daily support. Many attempted to get new visas from different diplomatic missions in Kobe, Yokohama, and Tokyo. Assistance was provided by the Polish embassy in Japan. One of the problems the refugees faced was that the term of the transit visa was too short. There was a need to extend the visas. Luckily, one of the Jewish refugees remembered a Japanese researcher, Mr. Kotsuji, who was fluent in Hebrew. Mr. Kotsuji kindly agreed to help the Jewish refugees and negotiated with the authorities. As a result, permission was given to extend the term of visas. The Japanese received Jewish people in a hospitable spirit and showed great interest in them. Local residents found the students and teachers of Jewish school to be especially exotic.
In order to leave Japan, we had to get visas to some place that will accept us, and this time for good, because Japanese visas were permits. It was very nice to the Japanese, but this was not our home. Now here the Polish government was very active, or shall we say the Polish ambassador in Tokyo. And they arranged visas and permits, for example, men of military age went to Canada and the States and could join the army there if they wanted. Other people were sent off to different countries. There were many, many possibilities.
Till the autumn of 1941, and then after 1945, all the refugees left Japan for their destination countries. The majority of them left for the US, while others reached Canada, Israel, South Africa, and other countries. Among them were 300 students and teachers of Jewish religious schools. After leaving Kaunas in September 1940, Sugihara's family was transferred from one European country to another before ending up in a prisoner of war camp in Romania. Finally, in 1947, they were allowed to return to Japan. In June of the same year, Sugihara had to leave the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Since Mr. Sugihara had good Russian language skills, after leaving the ministry, he worked in several trading companies in Moscow. Although the Jewish refugees were trying to find Mr. Sugihara to thank him for saving their lives, it took almost 20 years. Finally, one of them, Mr. Joshua Nishri, who was then working at the Embassy of Israel in Tokyo, was able to meet him in 1968. Mr. Sugihara then visited Israel, where he was warmly welcomed. In 1985, Sugihara received the Yad Vashem Award, which is the highest award for those who saved Jewish people from the Holocaust.
Tai jau litvakai dabar žino apie Sugiharą. Žino, aš juos aišku siunčiu pirmiausiai ir į Sugiharos namus ir pasakoju daugiau, kiek žinau. Ir atvažiavus į Kauną, aš supratau, kad kaip tik Sugihara, ta tema gali būti tas tiltas, kuris galima pradėti tiesti tarp trijų tautų ir paskiau plėsti ir plėsti.
The real number of survivors, thanks to Mr. Sugihara's brave act, is not clear, but it is possibly larger than the number of visas in the list. This is because some visas in the list saved not only the person to whom it was issued, but also accompanying family members. There may also have been hundreds of visas that were issued but not added to the list. In any case, we can be sure that thanks to the visas for life, thousands of people were able to reach Japan.
This table gets 3 extensions across the room, and on Friday nights we have between 18 and 22, 23 people at the table on Shabbat evening, Friday evening, and on Shabbat lunch.
The visas for life issued by Mr. Sugihara in Kaunas, Lithuania, became effective thanks to Mr. Ney, Mr. Kotsuji, citizens of Tsuruga, Kobe, JTB, and other numerous institutions in Japan, Lithuania, and Poland. Since there were several thousands of refugees saved by the visas, it is estimated that the number of survivors and their descendants has probably reached hundreds of thousands and is increasing every year.
私を頼ってくる人々を見捨てるわけにはいかない。でなければ私は神に背く。